Most people remember him as the fearless adventurer, the man who could wrestle danger with a smile and turn the wild into something almost magical. But what if I told you the hardest battle he ever faced wasn't in the wilderness, it was in his own home? And it didn't end with applause, it ended in silence. This is not just the story of a man who rose to global fame. It's the story of what happens when the spotlight fades and the person you built your life with slowly becomes a stranger. Long before the cameras, before the fame, before the world knew his name, he was just a young man from a quiet, rugged town. Life wasn't glamorous. It was tough, grounded, and often unpredictable. The kind of life that shapes you without asking for permission. He worked with his hands. Real work. The kind that leaves your muscles aching and your mind sharp. High above the ground, balancing on steel structures, he learned something important early on. Fear doesn't disappear. You just learn how to live with it. And maybe that's where it all started. Because later in life, when everything looked perfect on the outside, that same lesson would come back in a very different way. His rise to fame wasn't planned. It wasn't polished. It happened almost by accident. A small opportunity. A moment in front of the right audience. And suddenly, people were listening. He didn't look like a typical star. He didn't sound like one either. But that was exactly why people couldn't look away. He was real, unfiltered, honest in a way that felt rare. And the world noticed. What started as small appearances quickly turned into something much bigger. His humor connected. His presence felt effortless. And before long, he wasn't just entertaining people. He was becoming part of their lives. Then came the breakthrough. A story, a character, a role that would change everything. It wasn't just a film, it was a moment in time. The kind that reshapes careers overnight. Suddenly, he wasn't just known in one place. He was everywhere. Fame came fast. And with it, everything else. Success. Recognition. A life that looked, from the outside, absolutely perfect. But here's the thing about perfect. It rarely tells the full story. Because while his career was reaching heights few ever experience, his personal life was becoming more complicated. He had already built a family. Years of shared memories. Children. A life that had grown slowly, piece by piece. The kind of foundation that feels unbreakable until it isn't. After decades together, that relationship began to crack. Quietly at first. Then all at once. They separated. And for a moment, it seemed like the end. But then something unexpected happened. They came back together. As if love had found its way through the damage. As if history was strong enough to rewrite the ending. But sometimes, even second chances carry the weight of the first. Not long after, the relationship broke again. This time louder. More public. More painful. What had once been private became a spectacle. And that's when things started to change. Because it wasn't just about love anymore. It was about pressure. Expectations. A life lived in front of millions of eyes. And just when it seemed like he had moved on, life surprised him again. On a film set, in the middle of everything, he met someone new. The connection was instant. Real. The kind that doesn't need explanation. What started on screen became something much deeper off screen. They built a life together. A new chapter. A fresh start. For years, it looked like a perfect match. They shared everything. The spotlight, the travels, the quiet moments in between. They raised a child together. Built routines. Created memories that felt permanent. And for a long time, it worked. But here's where the story shifts again. Because even the strongest relationships can change, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. At first, it's small things. Different routines. Different priorities. Conversations that feel just a little shorter than they used to. Then one day, you realize something has changed. And you can't quite trace when it happened. After more than 2 decades together, the relationship came to an end. No shouting headlines. No dramatic collapse. Just a quiet decision that something no longer fit. And that silence was louder than anything else. He later described it in a way that stayed with people. He said it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like losing a part of himself. Not just a partner, but a best friend. Someone who had been there through everything. The highs, the lows, the chaos of fame, the quiet moments no one else ever saw. And suddenly, that person was gone. Imagine walking into a room that used to feel alive, and now it doesn't. Same walls, same furniture, but something is missing. And you feel it immediately. He talked about those small, painful reminders. An empty chair. A familiar object left untouched. Moments that used to be shared, now experienced alone. That kind of silence doesn't fade quickly. It lingers. It follows you. It asks questions you don't always have answers for. Midway through this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever lost someone who was still alive, but no longer part of your life? If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Because moments like these, they connect us more than we realize. What made this even harder was the history they shared. This wasn't just a relationship. It was part of his identity. Every memory, every achievement, carried traces of her. You can't just erase that. You can't pack it away and move on like it never existed. And that's the part people often don't see. They think once it's over, the pain ends. But in reality, that's when it begins. That's when you sit with the absence. That's when you replay moments in your mind, wondering what could have been different, what you could have said, what you should have noticed. And even for someone who had faced pressure, fame, and public scrutiny, this was different. Because this wasn't something he could perform his way out of. This was real, raw, unavoidable. He admitted that it changed him. That for a time, it took away his sense of ease. The humor was still there, but quieter, more reflective. Because heartbreak doesn't always break you loudly. Sometimes it reshapes you quietly. But here's the part that matters most. He didn't stay there forever. Over time, he found a way forward. Not by forgetting, not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by accepting that some things don't have clean endings. That some stories don't resolve the way we expect. And that's okay, because life doesn't stop, even when it feels like it should. He learned to carry the memories without letting them define his future. To hold on to the good without being trapped by the loss. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Not every love story is meant to last forever, but that doesn't make it any less real or any less meaningful. In the end, he didn't lose everything. He gained perspective. He gained resilience.